These are not businesses where you sit alone in a closet and do your work. You have to be out there talking to people. So one of the things I did learn or have to do from an early age was to get out there and talk to people and meet them and build relationships with them. And that is definitely part of, I think, being successful in those kinds of businesses.
Welcome to On Brand. I'm Donny Deutsch, and this is the podcast dedicated to a simple premise that everything is a brand. Every person, every celebrity, every product, every company, every movement, every religion is a brand. The brand is a set of values, and what we do here is a couple of things. First, we do an interview with an iconic personality about their own personal brand, and today we've got Steve Rattner, former car czar, former Treasury Secretary, morning show economic analyst, one of the smartest business guys around. He's got a lot of smart stuff to talk about what's going on in today's economy. And so I look forward to the interview with Steve Rattner. But what we also do here is what we call our brands of the week, where we kind of analyze the brands, the people, the places, and the things that are kind of setting the zeitgeist and which brands are up and which brands are down. And that's what we call our brands of the week. And let's get right into that now. Our first brand of the week is Glenn Youngkin. Brand up for Glenn Youngkin. He won the governorship in a previously pretty blue state in Virginia. Biden won that by 10 points, and Youngkin won by 2 points. And was it 10 or 14 points he won? I think he won by 10 points. But what's interesting why he gets a brand up is not because of the win, because there was a certain playbook that he used that I think a lot of the Republicans are going to use going forward. And that's, on the one hand, and once again, I don't like any of this stuff, but it worked, and so that's why I don't like it. On the one hand, keep Trump, kind of like, don't be a Trumper, but like don't alienate him, somehow do a little dance. And at the same time, kind of appeal to more of the moderate suburbanites and use also the cultural wars. And what they did so smartly was they made it about, they're taking your school away from you parents. They're basically, they're going to be teaching critical race theory in the schools. And the reality is they're not even teaching critical race theories in Virginia, but yet they used it. So what they know is they don't have any economic things to talk about because the economy is so good for the Democrats. They don't have any policies of their own to talk about. And what they do talk about is the scare tactics. And that basically they made it a local election. They took it down to local school boards and said, are you going to let your school teach critical race theory? And it's heinous and it's racial dog whistles, but it worked and was very effective. And all the Democrats had was, hey, the other guys like Trump. And you can't do that. You can't. By the way, this guy is not like Trump. He's more like Mitt Romney. He's a former private equity guy. And he ran a really smart campaign. Insidious, but smart. Next brand up is the Democrats. And the Democrats had a huge win after that loss on last Tuesday in the election on Friday, this previous Friday. They got their bill through, and they've gotten great economic numbers. I've talked about this on Morning Joe. They need to they got to stop talking about Build Back Better and a $1.7 trillion bill or a human infrastructure bill. It's all the economy. And call it the great economy bill, the reset the economy bill, the surging economy bill, but put both the bills together and start to own the economy. I worked on the Clinton campaign in 92, and there was a saying that James Carville put up there, it's the economy, stupid. And the only thing that trumps culture wars, if the other side is talking culture wars, if you got a great economy, you're going to win. If you got a shitty economy, the culture war argument is going to win on the other side. Whatever that culture war argument it is, but whether it's racial dog whistles, whether it's gender discussions, the stuff that, the really evil stuff that kind of just pits one side of this country against another and, kind of just makes everybody afraid of the woke universe. That stuff works except when you have a roaring economy, except when you have great unemployment numbers, except when you have great jobs numbers, except when you have an all-time stock market high. The Democrats need to own the economy. So a brand up for them, but get it right as far as what you need to own. Brand up for Joe Manchin. There's been a little kind of talk lately that he could be running for president. And look, Joe Manchin, you may be frustrated with him as a Democrat, but where Joe Manchin stands is where most of this country stands, right in the middle. Even just right setups. I mean, to me, somebody who's able to come in as a hybrid, run as a Democrat, but have a lot of Republican kind of feeling to them, or run as a Republican and have a lot of Democratic feeling. That's where the world lives. It doesn't necessarily win in primaries, but in the middle is what wins. And that's what we're seeing in all the elections of the past year or two. So the candidates, these wacky right, super right wing or super left wing candidates are not the answer in any general election. Congresswoman Lauren Beaubart, this is a genius. She goes, I gave birth in a truck. No one deserves parental leave. That's it. She was making an argument against Senator Pete Buttigieg. He took 2 months of paternity leave when he had twin babies. And he said, she said, listen, I'm a mother of 4. I delivered one of my 4 children in the front seat of my truck. Because I was a mom of 4, we got things to do. Ain't nobody got time for 2.5 months of maternity leave. We have a world to save here. There you go. Another progressive. Jesus Christ. And another genius also is a brand down for Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri. This genius says, liberals' attacks on manhood are driving men to pornography and video games. He actually said these things. He told fellow conservatives they must stop liberals from attacking masculinity and creating a nation of idle men who watch pornography and play video games instead of working and raising families. He delivered the speech on the future of American men. He said, liberals attempt to give us a world beyond men. It's part of their larger effort to deconstruct America. The endeavor, according to the senator, includes critical race theory, economic socialism, and doing away with the concept of gender altogether. Quote, the left want to define traditional masculinity as toxic. They want to define the traditional masculine virtues like courage and independence and assertiveness as a danger to society. I missed all that. Senator Hawley, where are you getting all this from? Where is the woke mob? Where is the liberal? Yes, people are for transgender rights. Okay, we got that. Maybe you got a problem with that. I'm sorry to hear that. Where is the attack on masculinity? I'm missing that. And that saying that courage is not okay or assertiveness is not. What are you talking about? Oh, is assertiveness? Yeah, assertiveness in the workplace and men being inappropriate with women, or men being inappropriate with women anywhere, being too assertive. Yeah, that's a problem. I don't think that that's destroying masculinity. I think that we're evolving as a culture. So big brand down for Josh Hawley. A brand up for Edward Durr. Edward Durr is a truck driver who just defeated New Jersey's most powerful lawmaker. He defeated Senate President Steve Sweeney. He's a truck driver for the furniture store Raymer and Flanagan, and he beat in South Jersey's 3rd legislative district. It was the biggest shocker of the entire election. Sweeney, who led the state's upper legislative chamber for 12 years. And here we have a truck driver. I mean, what else do you need to know? I mean, so anybody who thinks just that the days of non-politicians winning is over because Trump, no, you truck driver. So there's anybody in America, and it shows you where the Americans are at. Brand up for James Carville. He basically said that what went wrong in the election last week for the Democrats is stupid wokeness. That in the stuff, defund the police, take Abraham Lincoln's name off schools. People see that. I just think it's really suppressive effort across all the country of Democrats. He's right. This super wokeness, this craziness, this energy put on super left-wing, super woke stuff, that's not what this country wants. That's not what most Democrats want, frankly. So, any of this defund the police stuff, any of this we need to take Abraham Lincoln's name off of a school, this kind of stuff, that doesn't fly. So kudos to Carville, brand up for kind of waking people up on what's so stupid about defund the police and other super woke things. Brand down for Aaron Rodgers. Wow. What a bad week for Aaron Rodgers. Of course, everybody knows, well, not everybody knows, but most people know, but I'm sure by now, that he has COVID-19. And the brand down is not because he has COVID-19. The brand down is because he lied and said he was immunized. And that was his dance around the words. He never used the word vaccinated, but when you say you're immunized, that's what that means. And he had some other concoction. And shame on you, man. You're a leader. You're in a huddle with players. You're in a locker room, in a physical sport. And how dare you? And this is going to really, really hurt him. This is going to hurt him from a branding point of view. State Farm has been running his ads. I wonder what kind of heat they're getting. The problem is, at the end of the day, the most important thing for any spokesperson is to be trustworthy. Here we caught him lying in a life and death situation, and then being smug in his answer, his video he put out, that it's all about the woke mob coming up. No, it's not, dude. It's just about telling the truth. And by the way, if you felt you don't want to get vaccinated, that's your choice. Just be honest about it. Step aside then. Kyrie Irving, I don't agree with what he's doing, but he's basically said, I'm not playing. I don't believe in getting vaccinated. Okay, that's your choice. But you don't get to lie. And so I think Aaron Rodgers' brand is really, I don't want to say fatally damaged, but permanently marred. Like if somebody came and pitched me to use him in a product right now, I would say, no, thank you. You can't be a liar. And you can't be a liar about life and death. Brand down for Emilio Estevez. He was fired from the Mighty Duck show over his vaccine mandate. He's part of the Disney Plus's Mighty Ducks Game Changers. They were about to go into seasons 2, and he didn't want to get a vaccine, so they fired him. Okay, I'm just missing these guys who are making these decisions. Like, guys, are your kids not getting vaccinated for the measles and the mumps in school? Come on, Emilio, what's going on? You're a good actor. You've done some great work. You're losing yourself here. A brand up for Newsmax. You never hear me say that. Newsmax, which is somewhere right of Attila the Hun, the news network, who basically have been whacking all over crazy about vaccine mandates and against vaccine mandates, and this is un-American. Well, guess what? Newsmax, this is what they preach on the air, but guess what they're doing as a business? They told their staff on Thursday they intended to comply with the Biden administration's company's vaccine mandate. There you go. All their employees, including its anti-mandate hosts, will have to either submit their vaccination card or undergo weekly testing. There you go. Newsmax on the air saying don't get vaccine, or certainly shouldn't be mandated, but yet mandating their employees to do it. That's a real trustworthy news rank. Big brand up for Pfizer. Of course, a huge week for them. Their antiviral pill reduced the risk of COVID hospitalization and death by 89%. A lot of people think this is kind of the final nail in the coffin on COVID. Some experts saying COVID's going to be theoretically over by January. This is a huge, huge, huge step. Big brand up for Pfizer. And it's interesting, as I said, former FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb said Friday thinks COVID-19 pandemic in the United States could be over by January, transitioning to a lower endemic presence. Gotta love hearing that. Big brand up for cancer screening. Brand down for potentially, hopefully for cancer. You never want to give cancer a brand up, but brand up for cancer screening. Doctors are rolling out experimental blood tests that may be able to detect over 50 types of cancer. Think about that. Well, cancer is expected to become the leading cause of death in the United States this year. And this is amazing. They're now rolling out, it can hit 50 cancers. The blood test is called the Galleri. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Galleri. It can catch hard to detect, aggressive, and often deadly cancers like pancreatic, ovarian, esophageal. It's amazing. It works because as cells in our body die off, both normal and cancer cells have a limited lifespan. They shed their DNA into the bloodstream. So this is amazing. Imagine you take a test and you can find out one of 50 cancers ahead of time. This is a lifesaver, and this is great, great, great news. Brand up for Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. I mean, best guy in the world. Announces his production will only use rubber guns after Rush shooting. Obviously, we know the horrible story that happened, the accidental shooting with Alec Baldwin on the set of his movie, in the movie Rust. And now Dwayne Johnson is saying he will only use rubber guns. Well, by the way, shouldn't everybody, can't with the technology today, can't you have fake everything? Can't you figure out, obviously, rubber guns, if they look like guns, there should never be real guns used on sets anymore. I mean, I believe we have the technology to make guns, make fake guns look really real. I can talk to you guys on a podcast. We have the technology to do that all over the world. We can punch into a computer and in 1 second find out any piece of information about anybody where. We can talk FaceTime in China. I mean, we're sending people to the moon. Can't we make a fake looking gun that's not a real gun? And Dwayne Johnson evidently thinks the rubber ones are good enough. So brand up for Dwayne Johnson. Brand up for Ryan Reynolds. Gotta love this. You know, he's got his aviation gin. Well, he came out with the McRib inspired cocktail. It's called McRib Gin. It's the instructional video for the aviation gin riblet, which refers to as a Bloody Mary's hotter cousin. To celebrate the return of America's favorite rib-shaped sandwich, he invented the perfect glass-shaped cocktail to go with it. Gotta love Ryan Reynolds, the McRib Gin Mix. Love it. Here's a great one. Brand up for Betty White and Betty Crocker, because within 3 months, they're both turning 100. And they're two iconic Bettys. They're celebrating 100th birthday. Within 3 months, they're encouraging home bakers to celebrate alongside them in a campaign with Walmart. Betty White posted to her 1.6 million Instagram followers. The campaign introduced in-store events where participants received $3 Walmart gift cards to bake a birthday cake on Betty. What a great idea. Somebody's thinking. I mean, Betty Crocker, how many Bettys turn 100? And you got Betty Crocker, you got Betty White, beloved, put them together. You got marketing magic. Brand up for Paul Newman. He's going to tell his own story 14 years after his death. It seems as if there were a lot of biographies being written while he was alive. He's been dead 14 years. And that towards the end of his life, or at some point in his life, he started recording his own memoirs, putting them down and on tape. And his family's finally going to be releasing them in a memoir, in a book. So that's nice when somebody who's passed on and they've kind of actually, before they passed on, said, I'm going to get it right on a record for all these goofballs who are not getting it right. So good for him. Brand down for Scottie Pippen. He's taking a lot of shit for this. He came out in his new book, and his new book is called Unguarded. And basically, he took a huge shot at Michael Jordan, saying that Michael Jordan's documentary, The Last Dance, he paid so much homage to himself and didn't give Scottie and his teammates the proper due. Look, the tape is the tape. What Michael Jordan did and didn't do is evidence in the game. Michael Jordan didn't recreate history. Everybody knows Scottie Pippen was amazing. He was the number 2. He's one of the 50 now, one of the 75 greatest basketball players of all time. Jordan and him were not close. There's no secret there. But Scottie complaining that Jordan is making it too much about Jordan, the documentary was what it was. Michael Jordan is a one of a kind. He is a superstar for the ages. It is what it is. It sounds like sour grapes. Brand up for culturally for South Korea. All of a sudden, South Korea setting the global culture meter. They've got BTS, the biggest band in the world. They've got Squid Game, the biggest show in the world. They had Parasite, the movie last year that won the Academy Award, or 2 years ago. They've introduced 80 Korean movies and TV shows in the last few years on Netflix. South Korea, not a huge country in the scheme of the world, has become a huge cultural place to start trends. So there you go. Brand down for grocery stores. 56% of grocery workers want to quit. They're burnt out not post-COVID, but coming off the last year and a half, 2 years of COVID, what we've dealt with. Obviously, they were on the worker. The reasons grocery workers plan to quit is 58% burnout, 52% poor compensation. So you have almost 60% of workers of an entire industry that want to quit. That needs to be looking at. So brand down for grocery stores for being in this position. Brand up for Bobby Fey. Old friend of mine, Chef Bobby Fey. He's making treats for cats. Gotta love that. Bobby Fey, why not? Brand up for Lego. I love this. Lego's first global ads for adults targeted at frustrated grown-ups. They're aimed at adults. It's called the Adults Welcome Campaign. Encourages people to turn their Lego building to help them find a moment of mindfulness in their hectic lives. Basically, it created the following global research from Lego Group that found that 91% of adults said that they experience stress at least once annually. That's it, just once. With 77% checking emails when they say they aren't at work and 64% worrying about work when they aren't there. The new spots feature the tagline, find your flow. So basically setting up Lego as adults is a little bit of a diversion, maybe a meditation type thing to do. I think that's great. Lego's just not for kids. I love it. And those are our brands of the week. Now let's get to our interview with Steve Rattner. Steve is got a lot to talk about. He saved the car industry working for Obama. He's the economic voice on Morning Joe. He runs $50 billion of money from Michael Bloomberg. He's got a lot to say, and here's my interview with Steve Rattner. I love that sound. That's Shopify, of course, and it's the sound of another sale on Shopify, the all-in-one commerce platform to start, run, and grow your business. It's a platform designed for anyone to sell anywhere, giving entrepreneurs like myself the resources once reserved for big business, customize my needs with a great-looking online store that brings my ideas to life and tools to manage my day-to-day and drive sales. It makes it easy for anyone to successfully run their business. Shopify powers over 1.7 million entrepreneurs, guys like me, from first sale to full scale. About every 28 seconds, a small business owner makes their first sale on Shopify. Access powerful tools to help you find customers, drive sales, and manage your day-to-day. Gain knowledge and confidence, plus with 24/7 support, you're never alone. It's more than a store. It grows. Shopify grows with you. Go to shopify.com/Donny. That's all lowercase. Shopify.com/Donny for a free 14-day trial and get full access to Shopify's entire suite of features. Start selling on Shopify today. Go to shopify.com/Donny right now. Shopify.com/Donny. I want to talk to you about Chime. That's Chime, Chime. When your online checking account balance is running low, the last thing you need is a $33 overdraft fee. Overdraft fees have gotten way out of hand. In 2019, traditional banks took in $11 billion in overdraft fees. Chime is an award-winning app and debit card that has saved its members more than $10 billion in overdraft fees with SpotMe fee-free overdraft. Eligible members can overdraft up to $200 on debit cards, purchases, and cash withdrawals with absolutely no fees. This gives you peace of mind. Get started today at chime.com/Donny. That's chime.com/Donny. You deserve to have financial peace of mind. Join the millions of Americans already loving Chime. Sign up takes only 2 minutes and doesn't affect your credit score. That's chime.com/Donny, chime.com/Donny. Banking services provided by and debit card issued at the Bancorp, State, or Stride Bank NA members FDIC. SpotMe eligibility requirements apply. Overdraft only applies to debit and card purchases and cash withdrawals. Limits start at $20 and may be increased to up to $200 by Chime. Chime member overdraft fee savings based on eligible members' use of SpotMe versus $33 average overdraft fee. Overdraft fee data based on bank rate, checking account survey, and CRL June 2020 overdraft fees report. I am thrilled that today's guest and on brand, Steve Rattner. Steve is a friend of mine. One of the smartest guys in the world. One incredibly interesting biography. Started as a New York Times writer. Ended up somehow as an investment banker, a partner at Lazare, one of the founders of Quadrangle, one of the kind of first big-time private equity firms. He was a former Treasury official, was the car czar, basically saved the car business in this country. He's a Morning Joe regular. He now, I guess you could say, runs all of Bloomberg's $70 billion. He writes op-eds for the New York Times. He's got a book, Overhaul, an insider's account to the Obama administration's emergency order rescue. Kind of a renaissance, man. Welcome, Mr. Rattner.
Thank you, Donny. I'm happy to be here. My good friend for many years of Morning Joe.
Yes. And you've got such a fascinating background. That the question I ask everybody on this show is, of course, about brands. And I ask people to kind of define their own brand. What's the Steve Rattner brand?
Ooh, that's a great question. Look, I guess some people could look at me and say, well, he could never hold a job because he kept changing jobs. I think calling me a Renaissance man is excessively generous. I think I'm a guy who likes to do a lot of different things. And I guess if I were defining my brand, it would be someone who has a business background, lives in the commercial world, but has interests in public policy and the future of the country and in a range of different things.
One thing that's just kind of really curious about your background is there are not a lot of people in the history of the universe that go from being columnists or writers at the New York Times to investment bankers. Just give me that pathway, how that happened.
It was a little bit of luck, I guess. I decided, for reasons we can talk about, after 8.5 years at the Times, I'd started a week after I graduated from college, so I'd never had another job. I thought I ought to try something else, and I looked around, and this was 1982, and I had a lot of friends who had gone into investment banking. And I thought about other things. I won't bore you with my whole thought process. And I thought, well, that looks like an interesting one. So basically, it was really what they call on Wall Street dialing and smiling. I called everybody I knew, tried to get interviews, tried to knock on doors. And eventually, Lehman Brothers actually said, well, look, you can come and try it out here. If it doesn't work, it's kind of your problem. It's not a big deal to us, but it'll kind of be the end of your career. But I figured, what the hell? And I went and tried it out. And that was, almost 40 years ago.
There you go. What you are somebody who just has always had this incredible Rolodex. And I don't mean that, that's a funky term, Rolodex, but you just are connected in so many ways to so many kind of business titans, to so many public officials. You are really kind of an inner circle kind of guy. Does that go back? I mean, obviously it's your personality, but does that kind of go back to your journalist days and just always reaching out to people and making connections that way? Because maybe that's kind of what brought you something special into the investment world.
Well, first of all, of course, some percentage of your listeners and viewers don't know what a Rolodex is or won't know what a Rolodex is. Putting that aside, you and I are of a certain age that we actually had Rolodexes.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I think there's some truth to what you're saying. Journalism, but I've also come to learn many other businesses, most other businesses probably, but journalism certainly is built to some degree on relationships. It's not just about relationships. You have to be good at writing or broadcasting, whatever it is you're doing. But having relationships with sources, with people who would help me with stories, give me information, explain things to me, was a big part of being successful as a journalist. And that is also true as an investment banker, very much a relationship-driven business. These are not businesses where you sit alone in a closet and do your work. You have to be out there talking to people. So one of the things I did learn or have to do from an early age was to get out there and talk to people and meet them and build relationships with them. And that is definitely part of, I think, being successful in those kinds of businesses.
I want to go back to the mid-2000s, or specifically 2007, because it's going to bring us to today. You were one of the first guys to see the financial crisis coming. In hindsight, we all look back now, and it was so obvious in hindsight, but it was so hidden. What were the cracks you were seeing back then before the mortgage debacle? And I want to bring it to today because there's certain cracks we're seeing today. And just take me back. What did you see that other people didn't see?
Well, I do think a number of us saw it. I don't want you to make it sound like
they were a very small group of people saw it, right?
But I think as I remember back to that period, as you looked around, you just saw huge amounts of leverage in the system. You saw prices for assets at levels that didn't really make any sense, housing obviously being the poster child for it, but other things as well. And you saw lots of lending going on at what would seem to me to be risky levels of leverage and at incredibly low interest rates. And all that seemed to be a recipe for a problem. And you also saw nobody doing anything about it, everybody professing it was all kind of fine, it was going to work itself out. And obviously it didn't work itself out, and the rest is kind of history.
The one parallel I see today that scares me a little bit, I mean, obviously we're looking at different situations today, we're looking at inflation, is the frothiness. That being of a certain age, what I've seen over the years is whenever everything kind of just seems, everybody's making money hand over fist, and it seems so easy, that's when the kind of bottom falls out. What should we be afraid of right now?
It is a little different from '07. There's certainly there should be a level of fear, but it's a different kind of fear, maybe somewhat different, because I think inflation is something we should be worried about. I thought what you were going to say, and maybe you implied this, is you and I are of an age where we can remember inflation. There are many of my colleagues and friends who don't even remember inflation because it hasn't been around for 30 years. But I think when you see what's going on out there in terms of sensitive prices like commodities. Now, gasoline is now close to $4 a gallon. Cotton, corn, all these things, and used cars, the things that kind of move in a market. Inflation is very scary. But at the same time, as you implied, the stock market is very high. And even within the stock market, when you look at the growth companies, the tech companies, I was actually in California last week, in both Northern and Southern California. And the valuations of some of these young companies are breathtakingly high. Now, they're good companies, but the valuations are crazy in many cases.
Staying on inflation for a second, because we know it's not a good word, and the average person understands, okay, it means prices are going higher. What does that do to the system? What is that? All of a sudden, price of bread is going up, price of used cars is going up. Now, kind of just pick me up in the cycle. Where does that take us?
Sure. Well, the first thing that happens, and it's happening now, and I think we'll get to politics, I'm sure, but I think this is a piece of the challenges that confront the current administration, is it means that people's purchasing power is going down. So everyone has probably read or experienced themselves, for that matter, that wages are going up faster. That is true. But inflation means that after adjusting for inflation, wages at the moment are actually, in many cases, most cases, going down. And that is very painful for the average American. So that's the immediate impact. The second thing that happens is that at some point, the Federal Reserve has to act and raise interest rates to slow the economy down and take some of these inflationary pressures out of the system. And when that happens, when the Fed moves, and they're not ready to move tomorrow, but it feels like they're getting closer to moving. When that happens, two things happen. First, the economy slows down. Higher interest rates mean there's less borrowing, less economic activity, and so forth. But secondly, it almost certainly has a negative impact on the stock market, because the stock market is very closely tied to interest rates. High interest rates are the enemy of high stock prices. And so those are the things that you would expect to see happening in sequence. When, I don't know, but it's definitely closer than people would have said 6 months ago. So
what could break that cycle? You were once the car czar. Now I'm making you the economic czar. You're in charge of the World Bank. You're in charge of the Fed. You've got the ear of the president. If I could give you the magic wand right now and say, okay, Steve, here's what's going on in the economy. Here's what would we do? There's not that much we can do, in a sense that the cat is out of the bag. We have put an enormous amount of government stimulus into the economy, $2 trillion earlier this year, and a lot more the previous year, for good reasons. COVID was a huge problem, no getting around that. But the things we can do now are, one, the Federal Reserve is buying $120 billion a month of bonds and securities, and that helps keep interest rates low. And while I don't want interest rates to go up, they do need to start to go up to curb some of the excessive borrowing and so forth. So that is step one. I would not yet raise interest rates. I think the economy still does have to recover a bit more, but I would try to avoid putting more stimulus into the economy right now. Now, we can talk about the Biden plans if you want, and I'm in favor of much of it, but this is not the moment to be pouring money in the economy. This money needs to be
spaced out over a period of time so that we don't overload this economy and create even more inflation.
I want to talk about Canva, C-A-N-V-A. Making content is an essential part of what I do, and I keep this show going, but it hasn't always been a seamless creative process. Canva Pro is a design platform that empowers you to create and share stunning content in just a few clicks. Designing with Canva Pro is amazing, fast, and fun. Choose from thousands of templates that are easy to customize or start from scratch. It's got endless premium tools, photos, videos, and so much more. They add personality and edge to whatever you're designing. I'm telling you, man, they got a whole toolbox of stuff. Whatever you're designing, whatever images you need, whatever you're looking for, photos, fonts, videos, tools, everything you need. Designing together has never been easier. Sharing, editing, and commenting in real time. Canva Pro helps you stay organized on the same page and on top of team projects. Plus, you and 4 teammates can unlock everything Canva Pro has to offer for just $12.99 a month. With Canva Pro's content planning, you'll save time planning, creating, and posting social media content too. Pause, schedule posts, and edit them at the same time. It's great. I'm telling you, if you're creating anything, you want to create any kind of content, Canva Pro, design like a pro with Canva Pro. Right now, you can get a free 45-day extended trial when you use my promo code. Just go to canva.me/Donny to get your 45 free days of extended trial. That's canva.me/Donny. Canva.me/Donny. Yeah, I have 2 issues with the entire Biden plan. There's the one you talked about, that it's just throwing kerosene on the fire. It's too hot, and it's going to overstimulate the economy. But I have a problem also for the Democrats that it's going to make them vulnerable. That I just think if you give even though it's popular with 60% of the people, because if you say to people, do you want free college, do you want this, everybody's going to say yes. It gives the Republicans a club I call the Socialist Club, that all of a sudden the Democrats are lurched so far left, and it's socialist, and it's cradle-to-grave entitlements, and it just doesn't feel in my stomach the right thing for the Democrats.
It's an interesting question. Look, first of all, as you know, Biden is not doing well at the moment in terms of public opinion.
He's down to 41. He's 12 points underwater now. I just read that today, which was staggering. I mean, since July, the change has been meteoric.
It's extraordinary, and you may want to talk about Virginia, where there's a governor's race election a week from tomorrow, Tuesday, and Biden carried the state by 10 points, and at the moment he's polling 6 points underwater in Virginia, so that's a swing of 16 points. So yeah, it's extraordinary. And then the question is why? And I'm not sure whether I agree with you, Donny, or at least I'm not sure the public agrees with you. If you look at the public opinion polls, at least until recently, for the first time in decades, the idea of government doing more, of leaning in, of trying to solve these problems, actually has been polling positive. Whether it is, as we sit here today, whether it will be when the actual deal is announced and people understand what it's all about, I can't say. But when you look at the polls, people are worried that the number one issue today, actually, interestingly, is inflation. The public has figured out
they've caught up to it. It's finally past Corona. It absolutely has.
Yeah.
Why? I have my theories. I want to hear from you. Why is Biden all of a sudden gone so south in terms of people's perception? And I think it's a confluence of events, but I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I think it's a confluence of events too. I think Afghanistan was a disaster. It may well pass, but there's nobody in America pretty much who thinks it was handled well. The border is another huge problem that the public perceives to be a result of Biden encouraging people, this idea that it was going to be a different attitude than Trump and people should come and try to cross the border. That's another huge problem. I think he may have overpromised in a way. He's basically cast himself as a transformational president, one who's going to be LBJ and FDR put together. But the problem is he didn't really have a mandate to do that. The Senate is 50-50, as you know. The House is very, very slightly Democratic. And in contrast, LBJ, when he was president, had a 169-seat majority in the House, and he had 69 Senate seats as Democrats. So he actually had a mandate. And Biden is trying to pass these transformational proposals with the slimmest possible majority you could have. And so people are disappointed. They think he promised all this stuff and now it's not happening, and they blame him for it.
I think there's another thing happening with Biden, and it's what I'll use one of our Jewish words, this gestalt that people feel with him. He ran, and he was fortunate to be running in Corona because it was he wasn't out there that much. We didn't get to see that maybe he's lost 5-10 miles off his fastball. And I think that translates somehow. It doesn't feel like he's got his hands firmly on the wheel. Obviously, he is a nice response to Trump, and we'll take the kind of the boringness, but there doesn't seem to be a strength that's emoting from him that this public reacts to it one way or the other.
I think that's fair-ish. I would a little bit take the other side, and I guess a little of it depends on what you expected. I guess I was worried about Biden, and I do think that he has, for the most part, managed to speak clearly and to the point and succinctly, and a lot of things people didn't think he could do. I think, but that said, he's certainly not been a dynamic leader. I can't argue about that. But I think he's been, I think his stuff he said publicly, for the most part, has been to the point and appropriate and correct.
You think if Donald Trump ran today, he would beat him?
Well, it's interesting. You know, I did see a poll yesterday that they polled dead even, actually.
Yeah.
And so, you know, Biden won by 7 million votes, and now they're polling dead even. So who knows? Look, I just can't believe that we can argue or discuss who the Democratic nominee will be, should be, whatever. But the idea that after January 6th, the idea that after 4 years of Trump, everything we've learned since then, the idea that even if you were running against Mickey Mouse, that the country would want this guy to be president again.
So what does it tell you? What you're somebody that you watch, you're a behaviorist in certain ways. You obviously, if you study the markets, you're studying people, you're studying why people do things. So explain to me, and I ask a lot of people this, I get the first time around where it was like, Hillary was a terrible candidate, and maybe he's just saying things to get elected, and he's an outsider, he's a businessman. There was a lot of reasons to vote for him, even as repulsive as he was. My question is, to your point, after seeing what we saw and seeing James, describe why half the country goes, yep, we'll take more of that.
I think this gets a little bit to the question of why Biden is not doing well. I think that I don't think the country is not so much on economics, maybe, and so now I'm going to get out of my comfort zone, but maybe more on cultural things and identity. I don't think the country is exactly where Biden is, and I think Trump's genius, and you know this is your area, not mine, but Trump's genius in 2016 was he put his finger on something that was bothering people. You know, people who didn't want transgender bathrooms, people who didn't want to defund the police. You know, people who didn't want it to all be about inclusiveness and minorities and people of color and all that, and all those things that I think are important, but not the rest of the country. You know, the forgotten middle class, middle wage white worker in Ohio who had a job making $50 an hour in the GM plant and then lost that job when the plant closed and ended up working in a Starbucks and making $15 an hour. That is Trump's base, and that base is no happier today with Biden than it was before. And so I do think he commands a significant section of the country because of this feeling that the Democrats, you know, and many of Trump's voters were historically Democrats, that Biden's world has moved away from them.
Yeah, I'll put it even simpler. That I think that the fact that we're heading, and you've said this with all the examples, that whites are going to be a minority in this country in the next 15 years, less than that. That terrifies people, and race is at the bottom of all of it, as far as I'm concerned. And what Trump did, he did the dictator's playbook. You play on an other, you create an other, whether that other is a Mexican or a Muslim or a banker or a Wall Street person, to create hate and to create fear. You get the truth, so it's all mixed up. You demonize the press. You get a Justice Department under the wing of the executive branch, and that's the end of democracy. And what's so frightening, what I sit with bright people that you and I know, and they casually will, you know, address what's going on with how much on the edge our democracy is and what's happening right now in the legislatures in the states, and that we forget that we were basically 2 or 3 decent human beings away from the election being overturned. Brad Raffensperger, if you have a guy on the other end of the phone who says, yes, I'll find you the 12,000 votes, and a guy in Georgia, and a guy in Pennsylvania doing the same thing. And now Trump is teeing it up for this time around that more people are not running around with their hair on fire. Our hair should be on fire right now.
Our hair should be on fire right now. But one of the ironies of this, one of the oddities of this, which I can't completely understand in my own mind, is that the people who should feel, in a way, most destabilized, turned upside down, whatever you want to call it, by all these changes, are people who live in cities like New York, which has been a majority minority city for a couple of decades, I think now, a good long while anyway. The people in Ohio who are Trump supporters, some of them have probably never seen a black person or a Muslim or any of them. Their lives really haven't changed that much directly. They may read about it, they may see it on television, but it's not, their little hometown in Ohio hasn't really changed. So it's really ironic or odd that the people who are most upset about these changes are the people, in a way, who've felt it less directly. They may have felt it indirectly, but not really directly.
Well, I think the logic is they're unhappy in their lives. And when somebody's unhappy in their lives, you say it's not your fault, it's somebody else's fault. It's a very powerful thing that trumps everything else. You mentioned GM. I want to go backwards a little bit, because one of the most important parts of your career, and something you must be proud of, is your job as the being hired in the Treasury Department to be the car czar. Was that the official title, or was that just what the press called it?
There's a long story behind it, but the short answer is what the press called it. It was certainly not an official title.
Basically,
as I've said to people, my ancestors, some of whom came from Russia, would have found it rather odd and curious that I was now a czar when they had left Russia to escape the czar.
So Obama taps you to come in where the world is on the brink. We're just coming out of the financial crisis. Banks are going under. And the car business, the U.S. car business, was basically on the brink of going out of business. These companies were bankrupt. And you were brought in because of your financial acumen, because of your relationships, to fix this. And in a very short period of time, obviously you working with other people. Take me back there. Take me through the call. Take me through what you walked into and kind of the playbook at that time.
Well, the first thing I would say is that of all the things I've done in my career, and as you pointed out, I've done a lot of things, maybe too many things, it was by far the most satisfying.
Sure.
To really make a difference, not just make money for me or my investors or Mike Bloomberg or whatever. This was incredibly satisfying. But essentially, after the election, 2008, Larry Summers and Tim Geithner, who, top two guys on the economic team, both of whom I knew for many years, reached out and said, "Do you want to serve?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to serve. This is kind of my time. It's a financial crisis, and I thought I'd be doing something with banks or whatever." And after a while, they came back and said, "No, we want you to do cars." And I said, "Cars? I don't know anything about cars. I don't even drive a car practically. I live in New York." And they said, "You'll figure it out." And so I showed up in Washington to try to figure it out. And it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. But I realized that without doing anything, these companies were going to completely collapse, go into bankruptcy. 1 million people were going to lose their jobs. And nobody, I think most people didn't think we could even fix them. And so I figured I didn't have much to lose and a lot to gain if I could help figure out a solution. And so we put together a SWAT team, mostly of people from New York, from Wall Street, with Wall Street backgrounds, a couple from Washington with policy backgrounds. And we got to work. And it was somewhat to my surprise anyway. It actually worked. I have a friend who writes cookbooks, and one time my wife made one of her recipes, and she said to the lady, "Your recipe was great." So she said, I've never made it, so I'm glad it worked out. And that's kind of how I felt about the car thing.
What was the recipe? What was the recipe?
It was some kind of muffins.
No, I'm talking about the car recipe.
Oh, the cars. Look, the recipe was basically to get shared sacrifice from all the stakeholders, that the only way this problem was going to be solved was if everybody, from the lenders to the stockholders to the workers to the suppliers to the dealers, all were willing to take shared pain. And with that, and the use of bankruptcy and a few other tools, we could be successful. The other secret to the success was Congress had voted this $450 billion TARP fund the previous fall to help, really it meant to help the banks, but we had access to it. And so we used $82 billion of it for the cars. And we were able to do it without ever going to Congress. It was like a big slush fund, which Congress immediately had regretted passing. But the point is, and this is relevant to today, that Joe Biden has to fight with Congress for every single line item and every proposal he's trying to make. And we could literally, with a signature from Tim Geithner, the Treasury Secretary, disperse $82 billion. And so I'm not arguing against democratic government, but I will tell you it's a lot easier to make change and make it work when you can basically do what you want and do the right thing and not have to worry about the politics of it or getting through Congress.
Yeah, unfortunately, democracy comes with that. But you and I who come from the private sector understand that. I remember even just running a private company versus running a public company, my advantage of just, basically, let's do what's right. And I don't have to worry about quarter to quarter. I don't have to worry about a board. And so obviously the thinner it is at the top and the less layers there are, the easier it is to get things done. Would you ever serve in public office again?
Probably not, because I didn't know what I didn't know. I had for a long time wanted to go down there, and it had never been the right time, not the right president, not the right time for my family. And 2008, as I really was the right time, and I'm so glad I did it. But I realized that part of why I was able to succeed was because we did have a huge crisis that had to get solved. You couldn't let 1 million people be out of work, and everybody kind of knew that. And secondly, as I said, we didn't have to go through the legislative meat grinder that you see going on now. And so neither of those two things is likely to reoccur at the same time. And to go down there and beat my head against the wall. And I have total respect for the people who are doing it. But I don't know. I've been in the private sector too long to want to be in that kind of a situation, probably.
I want to shift to just some basic overall economic questions. I'm fascinated to hear a guy, an old schooler like you. I want to hear your take on crypto.
It's funny. I was just in California, and we spent a lot of time talking to crypto people. First of all, I don't believe in investing in things I don't understand, and I don't understand. Right. It doesn't make much sense to me. And you have to separate crypto into two parts. There's the cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, which is just a notional thing, and that I really don't understand. And we can come back to that if you want. But then there's this thing called blockchain, which is the technology that enables it. And there, I have become persuaded that there is something investable there. That blockchain is real. That it can be a better way to keep track of transactions, to process transactions, and so forth. The problem is, how do you invest in it? The market is completely overheated, and so forth. And many different. We can talk more about that if you want. But I'd separate the two. The currencies themselves, I think, are kind of wampum. The technology that underlies it, there's some interesting pieces to it.
So what plays out for our listeners out there that bought their $50,000 worth of Bitcoin? How does this thing play out? How does it either blow up or how does it keep going to the moon?
Well, so far they're smarter than I am because I haven't bought any of them.
Right. And I'm embarrassed to say I have bought. My theory behind it was simple, that if enough young people believe in it, it starts to become somewhat of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I just set up, I put a couple of dollars in, nothing serious, but just to play. And, I tripled my money, but that's fool's gold. I do understand that.
Well, there's nothing wrong with playing, but the idea that because a bunch of young people like it, it's like those old Roadrunner cartoons where Roadrunner's running along, and then suddenly looks down, he realizes there's nothing below him.
Right.
That's the risk. That's the risk. I'm not predicting it, but that's the risk here. That at some point people wake up and say, "What is Bitcoin for? Why do I own this? Why is it $60,000?" So the answer is I don't know. Predicting timing is impossible.
Yes.
There are currencies like Ether that really do have a role in this blockchain technology that could well have real value underpinning them. Something like Bitcoin, which has no real role in the world. It's not even gold. Even gold has an industrial use. You can make jewelry out of it. You can put it in your teeth. This has no use. I just don't know when or how, but I'm still not a buyer.
And explain to me NFTs, because I'm just reading how I collect art actually, and how people are buying digital scribblings, nonsense, for $500,000 that basically everybody has on their phone. And just take me through that, because that's the one that baffles me even more than Bitcoin.
Well, I wouldn't do. I'm not sure I'm the best. I wouldn't do that either. But I think the analogy is to art, which is that you buy a Picasso, you own an original Picasso. There's never going to be another one like it. And if it's a beautiful thing or a special thing or something that can't be replicated, over time, somebody's going to be willing to pay you more for it if you ever want to sell it, and so forth. That's the theory of the case. Some of the stuff that's being sold is crazy. The $500,000 number you mentioned happens to be, I think, almost exactly. There was a technology columnist for the New York Times who put one of his columns up as an NFT, kind of as a joke, and thought he was going to get like $600 and give it to charity, and end up selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so I don't get that either. I think that if it is something I think there is something like, I think you could believe in some kind of digital art. I think you could believe that
digital
there are
art,
things.
yes.
I think you could believe that there are things that could be rendered digitally that really are special. So you could say, a video of LeBron James, why is that an NFT? But I could also say to you, somebody could make 1,000 copies of your Picasso. They could look exactly like the one you have on your wall. So why are they not Picassos? And so the theory of the case, and I'm not necessarily underwriting it, is that if LeBron James says this is the only video of me dunking that ball, that I'm going to endorse or say is really mine, then maybe it has a lot of value. That's the argument.
Hey, let's talk about Morning Joe a little bit. We're both part of the posse there. It's really a fun group. It's obviously people ask you all the time as they ask me, because it's a very visible show. It's kind of a show of record. How'd you get involved?
I went on the show. I think I went on the show to promote my book, actually. And, Joe and Meek and I kind of hit it off. And it was actually, there was still the tail ends of the financial crisis. And I said to them, or they said to me, I don't remember exactly how it happened, the show should have an economic analyst. And so I said, I'd be happy to do it. So I am technically the Morning Joe economic analyst.
and the weatherman, right?
And the weatherman, exactly. He's got his charts, I got my charts.
When you do your charts, do they say to you, we'd love to do something on labor, or you just kind of say, this is what's going on, this is what I want to come talk about?
Occasionally they will come to me with a suggestion, but I've been doing this now for 10 and a half years.
Yeah.
And at this point, they'll say to me, come on Tuesday, and I'll just send them the charts at 8 o'clock the night before. And And I think we trust each other. They know that I'm going to do a good job, and I know they're not, they're not watching me that closely, and I have to do a good job. So I try to be on. I don't want to get fired.
It's a big income we both make from that. You and I are probably two of the. If I'm going to talk about the 10-year plus folks, it's Heilman, it's probably the Rev, it's yourself, it's obviously Barnacle and Willie. I'm trying to think of who else would be in that rarefied 10-year club.
No, there's not many of us. The circus moves on, and people get other jobs. They have conflicts, whatever. But yes, you're right. There's not many of us who are in that club. But I'm look. I used to. We don't have to get up as early now that we are not.
Oh, it's such a difference.
It's such a difference.
I went into the studio last week, and in the half hour, the hour turned into 3 hours. I mean, it's a completely different thing. I mean, it really is.
It's a completely different thing. I still like going to the studio, but I'm glad I don't have to be there at 5:45 and stay for 3 hours and all that. But I forgot where we were going with this. But getting up at 4:30 was painful, and so now I just kind of come do my charts and move on. It's fun.
Charts. And talk to me about work. You're obviously very close friends with Mike Bloomberg, and kind of you guys are business partners now, and that you've been running that huge sum of money. How did the relationship form between you and Mike?
Well, I think it's back to what you're saying about relationships. Well, we were friends, really. We met back in the mid-'90s at a dinner. I remember exactly where. And then it turned out we had a lot of common interests. We both skied at Vail. We both liked to do some sports, but didn't really like to watch many sports. We both were in business. We both had an interest in the media. Mike's always been fascinated by the media. We've both had an interest in politics. So we just were very simpatico, and we were really friends for more than a decade. And never did any business, never even really talked business. And then he came to me one day and he said, I've got this money that's piling up. He was mayor then. It's kind of in this blind trust, but I feel like I should do something with it. Will you manage it? And I said, Mike, I don't know how to manage that kind of money. I do private equity. It's like asking a cardiologist to check on your ankle.
Yeah.
And he said, you'll figure it out. You're my friend. I trust you. And so that's how it started. And that's been 12 years or so now that I've been doing that.
All right. Before I let you go, you're still a young man. Give me the next 10 years for Steve Rattner.
It's interesting. I say the next 10 years for Steve Rattner is just to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm at a point in my life where I don't think many people are going to ask me to do something new. I'm kind of almost past my sell-by date, but I love what I do. So I want to keep working for Mike and managing his money. I want to keep doing Morning Joe. I want to keep writing a little bit, and I've got my charities and things like that. I just want to stay healthy and do exactly what I'm doing for as long as I can do it. I've climbed all the mountains I need to climb. I just want to stay close to the one I'm on now.
I kind of feel the same way. It's nice. We're lucky guys. Steve, you're a good man. You're a good friend. And how busy you are. I really appreciate your time, my friend.
Hey, thanks for having me, Donny. This was fun.
I'll see you at Avra, okay?
All right. See you at Avra.
Have a great day, buddy.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed today's show. As I always say, remember to rate, review, and subscribe anywhere you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe. And watch us on YouTube. And subscribe there, and also leave us your comments. Remember to subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe anyway for the audio parts, for the visual parts. We want you to subscribe. We want you to rate. We want you to review. We want you to comment. We want all of it. I want everybody to have a great week. We'll see you here next week on. Everybody, thanks for watching. If you like it, hit that subscribe button. And we love having you here watching On Brand. And just don't miss any future episodes. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We'll see you next time.